A couple different things that I wanted to get started with, mostly centering around the playoffs. Jerry, you're a guy with a 0 ERA in the playoffs.
Whoops.
Never getting up a run in the playoffs. That's just how you roll. Um, with the addition of the wild cards and all these things, I love the fact that you mentioned earlier a subdued celebration. Now we have to have different levels of these champagne celebrations because, I mean, if you're the Dodgers and you clinch a playoff spot, you're like, okay, we know it's like we want to clinch the number one seed. So it's like I think at first they did like a little clink of the glasses, like a little toast, and then it's the shower, and then like when you do the division or whatever, the number one spot, you go ham. How are your celebrations? You were in 12 and 14, then you were on the 16 team too. How many celebrations did you get? And do you have like a
So
favorite
in
one?
in 12, so I made the playoffs 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So
Oh,
five years in a row. The 12 one was amazing. We were with the Oakland A's in 12. We chased down the Texas Rangers on the last game of the season, but the day before we clinched the playoff spot. That was the first year they expanded the playoffs. So we had a really good celebration, but we knew we had one more game to go. So we double celebrated the next day. Tons of champagne in the eye. Everyone is amazing. Every time you clinch the division, it's special. The subdued ones are the wild card because you feel like there's unfinished business. So like in 16 that we were kind of coming off the World Series in 15, we were a little bit disappointed. So we were like, yeah, we're gonna go, and we celebrated, and it wasn't like anything, but it was still a moment. And so those were only one game and you're done. So that season ended, rapid.
yeah.
But the champagne is the real deal. The worst pain for the best reason in your life.
I love it, man. I only did it once in at least at the MLB level. I did it a few times in the minor leagues and pro ball. But dude, yeah, you're right. It's the best. There's nothing better than that. I had a great night, late night Minneapolis after the celebration. My goodness.
Sneaky,
I knew I was
awesome
playing the
town.
next game too. I mean, I was a scrub, so I was like, I'm going to be in the lineup tomorrow. I
You
didn't care though.
probably got a couple knocks, feeling good, relaxed.
I think I did get a knock. You're right. But leading into like what I really want to talk to you about, because I love champagne, but let's talk some ball here. We have some teams kind of like fighting for their spot, whether it's a seed in the wild card, whether it's the division. Um, and we're hearing like kind of different things about the clubhouses. Like the Mets have been praised all year long for like their clubhouse, and that's been, in the media's eyes. I'm not sure if it's really that way, but the clubhouse has been a major difference from like what they did last year into what they did this year. Obviously, they added a bunch of players too. Were you like a fan of teams that kind of kept it business like during these moments? Or are you a guy like the Guardians saying, we're just having fun and they want to keep it as loose as possible? I'm sure you've been through both of those scenarios. Like, what do you think is better?
Yeah, so I've been through both extremes. I like where the Mets are. It's kind of in the middle. So
Yeah.
they're fun. They got a bunch of really like fun guys to just be around. So they stay loose, but they also have focus. They're also like, hey, we have a job to do every day. You can have your fun as long as you are locked in and ready to go. So, with guys like Scherzer, who sets the tone, this guy has done everything in baseball. He shows up every day, tries to outwork everybody. That's contagious. You have a guy like Eduardo Escobar out there. So I appreciated the looseness that we had in Oakland. It was really businesslike, but we were super loose. We hadn't been there before when it got to the playoffs. And so we were a little bit shell shocked. We kind of lost our identity. So I think too loose is a thing. And then you don't want to be too businesslike because you lose the fun of the game on why you're playing it there. One thing that I think about the Yankees, they were so spoiled because it's you either win the World Series or it's a bust of a year. So you forget that there's fun in playing baseball. And so you go about just doing one thing, trying to avoid losses. So I like the mix of both. You're there to win, but you're also there to have fun. And that's kind of what got you to the dance in the first place.
Yeah, we talked about the Mets clubhouse. I think you hit it right there with Scherzer. Like you have guys like Escobar. He brings the vibe every single day. Like he's the fun, the spark plug. You have some other guys like that, but here's Scherzer at the top. And yeah, he can have fun too, but he's like, hey guys, like he's the one that's gonna say, let's have fun, but there's a lot left to do. So I like the Mets in that regard. And that's crazy. It's like what a change from 1 year, man. And that's it's different from like everything I read about the Guardians. It's like, hey, we're here, we're having fun, we're trying to stay loose. And I think that is kind of like what you're talking about with like the younger teams. It can be so daunting and like scary that you just kind of have to avoid that nervous feeling and kind of and play a little bit looser. I think that's kind of the reason they're doing that.
Yeah, well, one thing with the Guardians is they're led by Tito, and Tito's done everything as well in the game, and so he understands that his young team, that young clubhouse, needs to feel relaxed, but he's also going to keep them focused. So I have no problem with Tito and what they're doing. He understands the identity. That's the key. Just remain who you are, what it took to get there, and hopefully you've got some veteran presence in that playing from the player side that can show those guys, hey, this is how you got to do it, because the lights are the brightest in the playoffs. All of your routines that you go through during the year, they're a little bit thrown off because you have so many different things you have to do, from interviews, TV, you have to do the national anthems at a different time. There's just, everything is a little bit disrupted. And if you have a leader like Scherzer there, that can say, hey, this is what you need to do to make up for those changes, because baseball, as you know, Trev, as you know, Jake, the players only here, it's a grind of a season. So you fall into these routines based mostly upon time before game. And so when that gets disrupted, sometimes it throws guys off. You saw Garrett Cole and how much that affected him when the national anthem was like 7 minutes later. It can have an effect. So when you have a guy to be like, hey, look, these are things to expect, you can just go out there and play baseball.
My guy Garrett yelling at Billy Crystal. Garrett, Yankee fans love you. He's won a lot of us over with his press conferences this year. He's obviously so good of a pitcher that we grade him on a very different scale than everyone else. But yeah, it was kind of like, Garrett, I don't know what you think's going on here. People are still going to be on Billy Crystal's side. The only thing running through my head, because it is players only, but you guys do. I didn't pop the bottles with the boys. Was you have to lean into your identity in that moment, like. I'm picturing, I forget if it was the COVID year or if it was 2021. The Yankees, they originally clinched and they did like a champagne toast. And it was very much the Yankees. I mean, I think they were in I think it was the COVID season, because I think they were in Buffalo. So they were in like the conference room of the hotel and did like a champagne toast. And it's like, if you told me that this year's Guardians did something like that, I'd be like, get out of here. I want Naylor spraying everyone with champagne. I want those young guys losing their mind, because that's who they are. And when they come into the playoffs this year, which we'll be talking about them a little bit in our playoff team draft coming up, is those guys better play with their hair on fire. I don't care if they run into my Yanks, Astros, whoever in the wild card round or whatever. Like, those guys better leave it all out there, because why wouldn't you? They're a bunch of kids. Like, if you're gonna take them down, like, go out how you have all year. And there's a great point about Tito, Jerry. Like, that guy's seen it all, and he'd be the first to probably tell those guys, like, rip it up tonight. You earned it.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy to be like, hey, stay loose, stay yourself. If you want to play loud music at a certain point, don't change who you are now. This is why we're good. And that's the same way with Max Scherzer. He's the guy leading the way. When he's spraying champagne in each other's faces, that's when the young guys are like, okay, cool, we can do the same thing. So it's all about like guys that have been there, guys that have been around. Keep your identity, understand that there's still baseball to be won, and just enjoy the moment. Because, for Trev, who had a really great career, a long career, to only have, never played in the playoffs, like, it's hard. It's a lucky thing to be a part of a good team. You never know. It's a team game. So as good as you are, look at what Mike Trout has done. You know what I mean? And so enjoy the moments, because they're few and far between.
100%. I wonder how much that playoff experience is going to come into play like this postseason. Because we have some teams that really haven't been there. You could talk about the Mariners, although, obviously they have players that have played in the postseason, but for the most part, it's a pretty young team. Guardians the same way. It's like, are they going to be shell shocked? I know that's one thing. That's kind of like a, as Jake likes to say, lamestream media topic, but it's true. I mean, it's a different brand of baseball. Like you're saying, the routines are disrupted, but also, I mean, it's a massive stage where every play is magnified. Like we talk about it on this show. We love covering the playoffs because it's like you can get hyper specific because you're only watching, 3 or 4 games, and like you can like really like hone in on things. And I think sometimes that could be overwhelming for guys. But I'm like, that's one of the things I love to watch is what dudes aren't affected by it. And you can almost tell the guys. Like I always said, like Eddie Rosario, from the day I met this dude, he doesn't give a shit what scenario he is in at the plate. Doesn't matter. There's not a situation that's too big. Doesn't mean he's gonna get a hit, but he's up there with confidence. I love seeing that. I love the guys because that's a separator at the big league level. Being able to handle big moments. Like I know we don't have a clutch stat, and I know we can't really quantify it, but there is something to be said about a guy with a slow heart rate in those moments.
I couldn't agree more, really Trev. Is. And that's something that I prided myself on. And these are the words that I used as like a veteran guy that passed it on to some of the bullpen guys and even some of the position players. I always talked about like when you're a little kid and you're dreaming about being in the big leagues, what are you thinking about? I was always thinking about facing Ken Griffey Jr., bottom of the ninth, game on the line, bases loaded, you're up by 1. And that's the moment. And so when I got out there during the playoffs, I was like, dude, I've been in bigger situations than this. And I think about all those moments where you're like, this is why I did all that work. This is why all that preparation, my whole life, I'm preparing for this moment. And so I could take a deep breath and be like, all right, this is fun. And I would just take advantage of knowing that the hitter wanted to get a hit way more than he wants to take a walk or a situation like that, whatever the case was. And I always said, look, man, these are the moments that you dream of. Baseball's cumulative over 162, but like you said, there's a clutch gene when the spotlight is on, when it's yes or no, when it's pass fail. Who are you in your DNA? Are you a winner? Can you overcome some of that anxiety? And that's where I thrived. I loved when the game was on the line. Whether it's one at bat, I always called it pass fail. To me, the playoffs is pass fail. You're either going to get the job done or you're not. And those were the moments that got me going the most.
Yeah, and I love that there's a way to combat some of that stuff now within all the organizations. Like there is mental health coaches there that can help guys thrive in these situations, and there's training for those situations. Like I think teams have realized, like, hey, like that's very important when you are in these big moments. You have at least have something to fall back on. You know what I mean? So I love it, man. Now I'm equal parts fired up and depressed because as we keep referencing, I don't have any postseason experience. And that just hurts my soul. Every time I say it out loud, it hurts a little bit.
It should, man. I remember I broke my arm in 2015 and I'm rehabbing in Port St. Lucie. And then, I refractured it. So my season was done and I'm watching my team, the Mets that year, go to the World Series. I never got to pitch in the World Series, but seeing my teammates, I'm cheering them on and excited and want them to win. But at the same time, I'm like depressed because I'm not a part of it. So I understand, man. It's again, it's out of your control. So of course, celebrate those moments with some champagne when you can. Get that sting in your eye. It's worth it.
And it's the beauty of the playoffs in a way, because Trev, you would have been a postseason stud. I mean, with that kind of juice and relievers getting shaky knees out there. I mean, we've already covered that. Jerry, I love it. I love hearing that from you because I think of the word cerebral when I think of Jerry Blevins, and you're the only person that I use that word with because I'm pretty sure I use it right. I like that that's you in the postseason is pass fail. That's a great way to look at it because it's true, right? Like you get the job done or you didn't. And it's what can you really do in those moments? It's like being prepared for a test or a quiz. Like you have put all the work in that season / your entire life to get there. So you might as well trust it now. And then at the same time, I do the next time we talk to brother Peter Moylan, because there's a couple ways to skin the cat, right? I could see Peter Moylan kind of, and there's some Aussie stereotypes in there, but Peter Moylan going, fuck yeah, man, I'm in the NLDS. Like I'm going to be hype and I'm going to drive this home, which, hey, however you skin that cat, good. But you definitely see the joking phrase that I've now used with my buddies when I go to a lot of weddings, some bachelor parties that those sometimes that Friday night gets a little rowdy. The joke I always say is the game starts moving real fast. Kind of like when you're talking about quarterbacks in the NFL or whatever it is, or if a late night starts getting late on you. Man, you're so right, Trev. When we watch that first playoff game in Seattle, if we get that, or when the Rogers Center is rocking, and if you botch a ball and that next ball is at you, that's not something you can prepare for, man.
But that's what I'm talking about. So like, again, no postseason experience. Fucking sweet, bro. But I played in big games or, been in the race. And like, that's the thing that you have to figure out is you have like a little bit of extra adrenaline. Like your T levels are spiking. Like, because at that level, everyone's got a little dog in them. So like, here comes the fight, and here, like, everything just gets intensified, so you have to be able to control that. And then like, you have to realize that person that you're playing against has got the same thing. They got a little juice. So maybe there's a little extra life today, or maybe that ball that he smoked is coming a little bit harder at you. And it's just, how do you answer that? And I love that 162 games, most likely, and I really hope this happens. Most likely it's going to come down to the last day of the season. And all those 161 games you played before, your entire season is going to be on one motherfucking game. A single mistake can change the whole season. And it's like, I love baseball because of that. We talk about our regular season and like, it's so long and it separates people. And then you get down and it's one game. And in baseball, anything can happen in one game. And I'm starting to get romantic about ball again, man.
You should, man. Baseball is romantic. It's a long game. It's different, man. It's not just, there's a little bit of everything. It's a long marathon, but also then it comes down to it. You got to do it in the moment. So there's people that have made their entire persona off of that one moment, guys that are World Series heroes or game 162, guys that weren't great baseball players, but they come in into a big spot and they never have to pay for a drink in that city ever again because they came up clutch in that one moment. It is romantic. I love baseball. I just got chills.
A lot of blood flowing right now. There's two things I need to address right now. One, for those that aren't going to look at your baseball reference, 7 innings in the playoffs, 0 earned runs, only 1 hit. I mean,
I can tell you about that hit, dude.
Slang that big thing.
Prince Fielder bloop right over second base. It still haunts me. Like a sky high one, I turned around, I was like, that's going to get caught. Landed like right behind second base in no man's land. Still hate it.
I mean, that's badass, dude. That's forever. Congrats. I will taste you. Awesome. And then I got to know, as we just talked about the different emotions of the playoffs and stuff, I guess of those playoff memories, what jumps out? Because, dude, you pitched in the 12th inning of a playoff game. Like, does that come to the forefront? Or when I say of your 6 playoff appearances, I guess, where does your brain jump first?
My brain probably jumps to the 2014 season with the Nationals. We were, supposed to win. We ran into Bumgarner. Our offense didn't do much outside of Bryce Harper, who played. Bryce Harper is when the lights are on, that guy performs big time. But I came in relief once for Strasburg in a big moment and threw up a 0. And then I did it in game 5 at San Francisco, game 4, game 5, the last game we played with runners on and pitched a couple of innings. So those are the ones that stick out the most. They're all really meaningful. I remember them all. I'm not remember every pitch I've ever thrown kind of guy. There's some players out there that know everything. But I remember basically every pitch I threw in every postseason.
That's awesome. Those not hashing old wounds. I mean, those 3 games you pitched in, you did your job. Not saying other people didn't, that all 1-run losses, which, I mean, baseball is a pretty sick sport in that way, huh?
You remember there's one, we played 18 innings at home in Washington, and Brandon Belt hit a home run in the 18th to win it by 1. And that was a long, lonely flight from DC to San Francisco. That was like, how do you turn that off? It's like 4 a.m. You're flying across the country. That was a tough one. Yeah, we were a really good team. set up to do some wonderful things. And that's baseball, man. You get beat sometimes.
Jeez. And the other thing I want to ask you quick, and if you don't have one, I'm sorry because I'm putting you on the spot. You mentioned Francona as the leader of the Guardians, and it just makes sense. I mean, he's baseball royalty to a degree. He's Terry Francona. Like, he is who he is. You mentioned Scherzer, and, obviously Buck is there too. I was just curious, do you have any Scherzer anecdotes for this year? Because we have such an image of this guy. He breaks the bank again. Good. He for the players, he represents the players during the lockout. He's not like necessarily your swag guy. We've seen some Scherzer outfits. He's clearly a work ethic king. He's obviously a guy that the dudes respect. So I was just wondering if you've caught any Scherzer anecdotes this year that it's like he's that dude.
I can't think of anything specifically, but he really is. He's a fun guy to be around in the clubhouse. He's self-deprecating. He's not afraid to get on you. He's funny. He's the most competitive guy in that clubhouse. You talk about when the lights are on, Harper, he's one of those guys. Like, he's not the best golfer, but if he's out there on the course with you, I've seen him, he will get into your head. If you're a scratch guy and there's a putt on the line, he will talk shit to you until you miss that putt. And if he's got a 15-footer, even though 9 times out of 10, he's not going to make that putt, when he makes it to win some skins and he needs it, he's going to sink that putt. Like, he's just a clutch human being, a fun group. Yeah, I've heard nothing but amazing things from the guys in the clubhouse about just having him around every day.
I love it. I think I think it just feels like Max Scherzer is the guy you kind of want him to be, at least for those of us outside the realm.